This is the audiobook, The Good Book, by Brittney DoGood. Chapter 1, The Garden. The story began with Adam in Eden. God made him a wife, and she woke him from sleeping. They played and they danced, with no shame and no pants. It was all games of romance. They were happy, just focused on being. But Eve was also reflective. She went to the tree to inspect it. As she pondered it all, she thought good and thought bad, then the negative one was erected. She called this subtle beast Satan, the negative one always hating. He slithered some sleeves he had up his sleeve, and of course Eve believed every statement.
Put a hand on the fruit. Just touch it, I bet you won't die. It's tasty, it pleases the eyes. If you eat it like God, you'll be wise.
Some things he was saying were valid, but all falsehoods are truth mixed with lies. No matter, she ate, then he ate, and that one moment changed all our lives. Their three eyes opened wide. They knew spirit and body and soul. They knew they were due to be parents of the greatest story ever told. They felt what it meant to know evil. They tasted its bitter fruit. When they looked and saw their nakedness now, they felt love, but they felt lust too. Thought told them next what to do, to keep God from finding the truth. They sewed up some leaves and hid in the trees, disguised by their camouflage suits. God's voice walked in with the breeze. They blended so well, even God couldn't see. He looked all around, but when they were not found, God summoned Adam with his speech. The force was too strong to retreat. Adam could not keep his feet. In anguish, he fell to his knees.
God, have mercy, please. The woman you gave me, she was deceived. The evil one tricked us and made us both eat.
In front of the whole congregation, with no arbitration, God demoted Satan beneath all of creation. Chapter in between 1 and 2. The Fall. Before creation began, God wrote his plans. He told the angels their job was to serve the humans. Some angels were zealous to get man in shape. Some angels were jealous and wanted man's image erased because they thought that God had forgotten their place. How could he pick them to be king of the earth? We were made first. We made him from dirt. Humans cannot rule. They only make things worse. We give them so many gifts, and all they give back is cursed. Well, let it be known, we will end this show.
We'll destroy his kingdom before it can grow. We will capture his son, his seed, and his nation.
1/3 of God's angels went down with Satan. Deep in their hearts, they all longed to be fathers. Phase 1 of the plan, seduce Eve in the garden. Chapter 2. Brothers. Life wasn't easy for Adam and Eve. They were banished from Eden due to their deeds. The ground was cursed when they ate from the tree. From the sweat of their brow, they plowed every seed. First Adam knew evil, then Adam knew Eve. They inspired their sons to follow God's lead, but the fruit don't fall too far from the tree. Abel spent time in the stables. Cain was a man of the field. Competition was high at all times for who would have the greater yields. They grew out of adolescence. The time came for Adam to pass down his blessing. Abel slaughtered the very first lamb for God, while Cain offered fruit salad with dressing. God took aim, fire fell like rain. Abel's lamb on his altar burst into flames. To Cain's disdain, his offering remained. Without any reason, this filled Cain with shame. The negative thought made his heart shift. He didn't understand there was a curse on his gift. The soil was cursed for his father's deeds, so the crops Cain offered, God couldn't receive. Even though the lamb foreshadowed God's son to be, Cain couldn't relate, and he was very displeased. Abel laughed and teased. He was feeling at ease, because this grocery game decided how the world would be divided.
Your creator chose Abel. The younger will be first. Abel will keep all that moves and creeps, while Cain tends the dirt.
Cain lowered his head. He was ashamed. As the eldest son of God, he felt he should reign. God saw him in pain, and his brother he blamed, so he came down a plane to talk some sense into Cain. If you do what is right, you can hold up your head. What's for you is for you, and what's Abel's is his. Clenched in your fist is the living and the dead. The evil one waits at the foot of your bed. He plots your demise, hoping anger will spread, so you must control the thoughts in your head. Cain was just cooling off when Abel came with his flock. He led his hungry sheep to eat some of the crops. They decided to dine on the best of Cain's stock. Abel didn't make them stop, he just sat there and watched. Cain's anger turned to rage. The snake was out of its cage. You don't deserve God's blessing the way you behave. This time, your fee won't be waived. For every grain your sheep eat, 3 will be shaved.
You better calm down before I make you my slave. You're wearing 2 sheep now, and I've yet to be paid.
The evil one laughed. Death's road had been paved. If Cain had just let it go, then Abel could have been saved. But Cain's adrenaline sped. He could only see red. He rose up and gave Abel a fatal blow to the head. He kept wailing, but sadly Abel was already dead. Cain came to his senses and realized what he did. He was frantic in a panic. He started to dig. He buried Abel in a hole about 6 feet deep. God heard Abel's blood crying under the wheat.
Where's your brother Abel? Please tell me he lives. What you mean? You don't know where your golden boy is?
Cain had committed exactly what God forbid. He felt bad another curse would haunt one of his kids. God explained to Cain he'd have to live off grid. Then Cain cried back to God.
My punishment is too big. If I'm doomed to be a wanderer, how will I live? I feel so filthy. I feel so guilty. When they find Abel dead, they will surely kill me.
At the end of the day, you are still my child. My genetic mark protects you out in the wild. Anyone who kills you because of your crimes, my wrath upon them will multiply 7 times. Chapter 3 Sons of Cain. Cain had to leave Adam and Eve. Nothing would grow when he planted his seed. He figured a wife would make him succeed, so he packed up his things and found her wandering east. Cain's wife conceived, he could hardly believe. He settled down, designed a town that grew into a city. Cain named the city Enoch after his son. The great city Enoch grew to thousands. One of Cain's grandson's name was Lamech. He had the mark of Cain, so he garnered respect. Like Cain too, Lamech had a quick fuse. When it came time for marriage, they tried something new. For my son Lamech, status quo will not do. Instead of 1 wife, Lamech will take 2. So Aday and Zaleh were arranged in his marriage. Though their burdens were different, they equally shared it. Aday had 2 sons, Zaleh had none. Zaleh wasn't happy, but Lamech had his fun. With no kids of her own, Zaleh felt so worthless. The truth was, Lamech made her childless on purpose. Men were infatuated with barren ladies because they found their wives less savory after having babies. Lamech slipped potions into Zaleh's cup so her figure never withered or had baby fluff. Multiply and be fruitful, that was Adam's only plight, but his sons were having trouble doing anything right. Jabal, Lamech's firstborn, lived like a Sioux. He's the father of all men who become buckaroos. Jubal, his twin, was a pioneer too. He's the father of all who play guitars and flutes. Zaleh didn't lose hope. Instead, she prayed, and by God's grace, she had kids in her old age. A girl named Ma and a son, Tubal-Cain. He had the mark, so he was blessed with his grandfather's name. He grew up a hunter. He was best of his class. He taught his sons to forge weapons from iron and brass. Tubal-Cain loved hunting with Lamech, his dad. He had to be Lamech's eyes when his sight went bad. One late night, they were out keeping watch when they saw something big climbing up on the rocks. Lamech steadied his aim. "Dad, take the shot!" A single arrow flew from Lamech's bow. It knocked the beast right off of its toes. They ran with excitement, but as they approached, what they thought was a goat was a man in a cloak. Tubal Cain exclaimed. Lamech's voice was detained. This was not just any man, it was Grandfather Cain. Lamech saw the mark that God had put on Cain's head, remembering 7 times what God had said. The thought of catching the wrath sent Lamech in a rage. The snake was out of its cage. He opened Cain's playbook and ripped out a page. He snapped on his son. "You are to blame!" Before his son had a chance to contest his claims, Lamech clapped his hands together, crushing Tubal Cain's brain. Unlike Cain, Lamech didn't feel shame. In fact, if he went back, he would do it the same. He reached up to God and called out his name. "You protected us all when the past judgment came. Put your wrath on my enemies 70 times 7 Cains." From the first violent turn, clearly nothing was learned. Adam and Eve were very concerned. They came together with intention when they were both at their best, and Adam's first child was born in his image named Seth. Chapter 4: Enoch's Prophecy. The humans multiplied and lived gloomy lives. Everyone except Enoch. He grew up wise. He was the 6th generation of Seth's protégés. He taught with God and walked with God all of his days. For weeks he'd hide away in caves to worship and pray. Everyone looked to him when Adam died of old age. Then God appeared to Enoch in a foggy haze. "Adam has gone to sleep in his grave. I've chosen you as high priest in his place. I'm counting on you to keep them all safe. Go to my people and teach them nature's ways." Enoch had his reservations, but he obeyed. He was brilliant and bold. He schooled the young and the old. Kings and princes were amazed to hear the proverbs he told. He resolved their quarrels, big and small. They bowed to him and declaring Enoch king of them all. Throughout all the land, there was finally peace. Enoch taught them Genesis, creation by speech. Through knowledge and wisdom, their numbers increased. Enoch brought many to nature that had been led astray, but God needed Enoch, so he couldn't stay. Enoch had been missing for several days. When they finally found him, he emerged from his cave. Suddenly, the sky opened, angels swooped down, and they took Enoch away in the clouds. They were stunned, some were scared, and some continued to look for him. But he was not there. The angels had took him. Before Enoch left, he took certain steps. He prophesied to Methuselah what was to come next. It was something his son would never forget. A flood was coming, and his life would be the measuring stick. For hundreds of years, Methuselah took the lead, but the younger generation saw no need to take heed. This angered God, so his mercy dwindled. The earths quaked, and the volcanoes whistled. They planted seeds, but all that grew were thorns and thistles. Gloom covered the land. Men died left and right. 5 generations were gone overnight. Enoch, Adam and Seth, Cain and Mahalalel, Jared, Lamech. All the firstborn of Adam had took their last breath until Methuselah and his grandson Noah were left. Chapter 5: Before the Storm. The angels had fallen for beautiful brides. They took daughters of Adam and made them their wives. Nature was defied, and it showed in their seed. They birthed half-human giants, like Hercules. They multiplied by the dozen, rotten to their core. All men became evil, the rich and the poor. The only thing on their minds was women and war. Their plan was to mutate the human races and continue the plan began by Satan. In Eden, God promised he would come as his son and crush the head of Satan's kingdom. Altering the code hidden in man's blood would delay the light wave carrying his judge. God looked it all over. Filled with disgust, he chose to destroy them all with the great flood. The angels were weary because they loved their children. God vowed, as their punishment, with the flood, he would kill them. Warnings were sent through the men of God. The first was given by the famous Enoch. Before he was taken, Enoch told his son, "The flood will come when your life is done." Noah was 595 when he finished the ark. He was 590 when God told him to start. Before and between was reserved to redeem any souls that would listen to Noah's petition. Turn back to nature and honor her ways, or God will destroy you with his big wave. Join me and my family. You'll be safe on the ark. The doors will close when the long rain starts. After hard months of work, Noah headed to bed when his 3 sons yelled for him, "Grandpa's dead!" Noah solemnly prayed over Methuselah's grave. As the headstone was laid, it started to rain.